And this has been a priority for us since it occurred, but even before that. I've been with the city now for 23 years, and I worked a lot of ball games throughout my career here. And we have a lot of things that are standard procedure as far as the number of officers that we have. And I felt like at the time that we have a very good police presence at our games, basketball, football, and all of them like. But we have had some meetings here in the last little bit about doing some things in conjunction with the school to hopefully make it safer for the rest of the home games. I'm a parent as well. I have 2 children, so I can totally understand. But we're the police department, and we're charged with trying to provide safety to everybody, and we take our jobs real serious. So this is of the utmost importance to us as a police department, but also to me personally.
How could that happen? Where were the police at? And we were here. So I just want to kind of break down how it played out. Prior to the end of the game, 2 students left early because they wanted to beat the crowd. They said they passed 8 or 9 males standing in the driveway in between lower lot and upper lot, and didn't think anything of it at the time. It's not unusual to have groups of teens in and around the school property and the stadium when the game's going on. As they passed, 2 of those guys broke off and followed them and asked what time it was. One of the students pulled out his iPhone and gave the time, and then they continued on, crossed the railroad tracks, headed home into Oakhurst, when all of a sudden they got in front of Renfro, and the same two guys that had asked for the time ran up behind them and produced a weapon and robbed one of the young men of his iPhone. You have to understand, at that point, they don't have a phone to call the police, so what ended up happening was we didn't get that call until maybe about 15 minutes later, once they made it to one of them's home and told the parents, and then the parents were able to call. And then we get dispatched to a home in Oakhurst. And trying to get updated information, it happened around Renfro. The suspects were last seen running south on Adams. So some of the officers that had been in and around the stadium, as the game is now coming to an end, is now responding to the victims in Oakhurst and to the area where the suspects were last seen. So that was the first incident. The second incident occurred on the property while the officers were responding to the first incident. And also while we were getting, the officers working the game were getting reports of fights breaking out, which a lot of times, and I've worked these games for a long time, what you'll have is a big moving crowd, and somebody will be yelling fight, and then we'll start moving toward the crowd, and then there won't be a fight, and the crowd will just move on through the school property and disperse. We didn't have a clear location as to where the second robbery had occurred when the call first came in, and only after a second call were we able to determine where the victim was now. So after we were able to get to the victim and her dad, it's determined that she left the front of the school and walked around the corner, that front corner, to the path that leads to the stairs that leads to the upper lot. When she was met, she turned the corner and met one of the suspects and was immediately grabbed from behind by a second suspect. And she was talking on the phone, and so they just took the phone out of her hand. And they did also have a weapon. The third incident occurred about an hour after the game let out. 5 students had left the game, left the property, left the school. After eating and walking back toward the school, they noticed 3 males come out of the shadows at Maple Street, which is right across the street, and it can be kind of dark there. They came out of the shadows, crossed the street, and said, "Hey, can you tell me what time it is?" One of the students pulled out his iPhone and told them what time it was, and they immediately demanded the phone, grabbed him, produced a weapon, and he gave up his phone. There was about a 15-minute delay. The students moved on to another, not very far away, but they moved on to another location before they called. So at this time, do you see how it played out is we're getting these calls, and there's a delay, and sometimes there's problems in where did it actually happen. Also, after we put the notification out and made the incident public and let everybody know, another student came forward and reported that after the game let out, he was over on Commerce Drive and was approached by 2 males as they were leaving the game and said what time, and asked him for the time. He said he pulled out his phone, They followed him, asked him what kind of phone it was, who his carrier was. He felt like they were trying to get his phone away from him. He said, "I thought I was about to be robbed." And he saw a group of students that he recognized from school and went over to those students and kind of joined the group. And at this point, there's officers moving groups of students out of the stadium across Commerce while somebody's yelling, "There's a fight." So I think that was the deterrent for those two to not take that young man's phone. So there was a potential fourth incident, but he was able to walk away and get with his friends, and it didn't happen. Why is this happening? And the answer is there's just plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of iPhones, and this is a community of helpful kids and helpful people that when somebody walks up and seemingly innocently says, "Hey, can you tell me the time?" they don't give a second thought to pulling their phone out, since this has gone the way of the dinosaur right here. Pulling their phone out and giving the time. And so I think that iPhones, this is a nationwide problem right now, because these phones can very easily be deactivated and shipped out of the country, never to be seen again. And that's what intelligence is telling us, is there's such a huge demand for iPhones in South America, China, Africa, those are the three main ones, that they get sold to fencing operations and they're gone. Thieves are simply looking for an opportunity where they can find someone that has an iPhone and they can take it with little resistance. And if in each of these cases, everyone, and ones that I have worked previously, we always see that it's basically over in 30 seconds, if it even reached that level. Give me your phone, they've got the phone, they're gone. So with the very short time, the duration of the actual crime, followed by someone having to get somewhere else to call, and sometimes there's a delay because they're shocked. I can't believe that just happened. So you stop and you talk about it, and what should we do, what should we do, and then there's even more of a delay. I can tell you, based on some video evidence that we've obtained in the last 24 hours, that we have our suspects leaving the city on video at a time with a timestamp on it before the call for the last robbery ever came to the police. So they were literally gone before the call was made. Don't walk and talk and text on your phone. When you're distracted to that point, you're not going to see what's coming in around you. Put it away until you can get somewhere where it's safe to use the phone. A current common scam is the, "Can you tell me what time it is?" I've also heard in previous cases, "Hey, can you tell me directions?" Or, "Hey, can I borrow your phone? My ride didn't make it and I want to call my mom." And then the second the phone comes out, they grab it and they're gone. And a lot of times these are juveniles, so teenagers think, "Oh, it's another teen. I would want to be able to borrow a phone if I was waiting to get my ride." And they just don't fall for it. Lead them somewhere else. Not one of the 3 phones that were taken in the robberies on Friday night had the Find My Phone app downloaded, because people think that that's something that you can activate after the fact, and if it was never downloaded to the phone prior to it being stolen, you can't go back in and track the phone at that point. So first things first, make sure you have that app downloaded to your phone now, and then we can pull it up and try to track a location on it once it's taken. Walk in groups, and I understand we say this, but then the last group that had left the square and come back roughly an hour later after getting something to eat, they were in a group. 5 teenage boys approached by 3 teenage boys. So it's still better than being by yourself. I know teenagers don't want adults walking with them because that's really not cool, but maybe a group of adults walking, not quite so close, but to be able to keep an eye on the kids out walking. Just more people out walking so that you don't have these isolated groups, which is basically how this panned out. If you're approached by a robbery suspect and they demand your phone, give them a phone. No item, no phone, no object. And we didn't have any problems with this past weekend, but I have had, this happen where people are like, "No." And I think it's out of being stubborn. Like, "I can't believe you're telling me to give up my phone. Just hand it over. And it's not worth, you being injured or your life." If you're the victim of a robbery, immediately get to the closest place where you can call the police. The faster that we can get that call in, the faster we can get there and try to do something. And we're always playing beat the clock when something like this happens, because they wait till they don't see us anymore and go around the corner, or wait for us to turn the corner, do what they've got to do, and then go.